Miami's offense bogged down versus the Clippers, who got an easy win to end the Heat's win streak. But did rookie Khalil Ware show some promise in the loss? We'll break down the game on today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, whether you're tuning in on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Both of us are potential Heat media members who cover this team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Have a jam-packed show for you today. We may have gotten a better look at what life after Jimmy Butler could look like. Plus, we have more reporting on the Jimmy Butler situation. First, recording this late Monday night after the Heat's 109-98 loss to the Clippers in Los Angeles. The offense just dried up in this one. My takeaway, David, no Bam Adebayo, who missed this game after taking that hard fall against Portland over the weekend. Obviously, Jimmy Butler is still serving that suspension. And they go ahead and start Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, Jaime Jaquez Jr., Haywood Highsmith, and then they started Kevin Love in Bam's place, and then Love and Khalil Ware basically split the center minutes. We'll talk about Ware here in a second, but I think a coach can only manufacture so many points.
Yeah.
You can only manufacture so much offense. At some point, you just need shot makers, and Miami obviously missed Jimmy Butler. They also missed Bam's screen setting on the perimeter. They didn't have anybody to create a shot or even break down the Clippers' defense. And the 3-game win streak was nice, but let's face it, the teams that they beat stink, right? Like the Jazz, the Blazers, the Warriors, like none of those teams are any good. And this was the fourth rated defense in the league with the Clippers, the best defense they've faced in 8 games, and it really looked like it.
Yeah. In the second quarter in particular, Miami manufactured 35 points in the first quarter, and a lot of that was long-range bombing from Kevin Love and Tyler Hero. Tyler also managed to draw a couple fouls from beyond the perimeter, was able to get some free throw attempts in order to boost that scoring a little bit. And that's not a knock on him or anything like that. That was what carried the offense in the first quarter. And then when they subbed out both Love and Hero, they were kind of left with a whole lot of nothing, and they were getting pretty generally good looks from the perimeter. Unfortunately, Niko Jovic wasn't able to knock those down. He struggled from the field. I think he finished 1 of 10 for the night. That's not going to cut it, obviously. He wasn't able to finish at the rim. He wasn't able to hit from the perimeter, which is what we've seen from him of late. And Duncan Robinson, I think they did a pretty good job of limiting him. Without Bam out there, as you pointed out, to create a lot of those open spaces, he just couldn't find any kind of real space. Like it felt like they were doing a good job of keeping somebody on his hip at all times and going around Khalil Ware, and the way he sets screens at this point in his career, not nearly as effective. He doesn't have the same kind of gravity as Bam does as a roller towards the rim, so he can't draw a defender. He kind of just pops a leg out there, a rather spindly leg, as you can tell also, and he's not going to really set a screen as sturdily as Bam does, and he doesn't roll to the rim with the same kind of authority as Bam does. And so the 2-man game that we've seen work so well over the years with Bam and Duncan was non-existent. I thought Duncan was really a non-factor out there. Like his minutes were pretty terrible, and they only manufactured 13 points in the second quarter, 20 points in the third quarter. So by that point, Miami's offense was just completely stalled out. And you got to give credit to the Clippers. I mean, they played a much tighter defensive effort after that first quarter, but there wasn't really anything there was no spark from anybody the way that there had been in the first quarter. They weren't able to generate points easily. They weren't able to kind of run their offense the way they normally would. And it just looked like they
weren't even able to get into the paint.
Yeah.
They didn't have anybody that just get into the paint and create rim pressure and just break down. They scored 35 points in the first quarter, but like you said, most of that stuff came from the 3-point line. It's not like I don't think that they were executing anything better in the first quarter than they were in the second or third quarter. They were just making shots. Kevin Love made three-pointers in the first quarter. Tyler Hero made a bunch. Like Terry Rozier made his first 3 buckets and then missed his next 3 buckets. And we'll get to Terry Rozier a little bit later because this whole thing still is pretty confounding with him. But they score 35 points in the first quarter, and then they combine for 33 points across the second and the third quarters. And then the fourth quarter, basically all garbage time, they score another 30 points in that one. This is what the Clippers do. To your point, got to give credit to them. This is what the Clippers do, and it's what they've done all season. They're 21-17. They have playoff position in the West. This is what they do. They turn everything into a rock fight. They slow you down. They have this great defensive backbone, and then they get just enough from guys like James Harden and Ivica Zubac in that two-man game, that pick and roll. They've got Kawhi back, even though he didn't play a major factor in this. Norm Powell is good for a 29-point game pretty much any night. You never know when it's going to happen. That guy is, to use Spo's terminology, ignitable. But, yeah, the Heat they didn't have anything. And without Bam in there, they didn't even have that two-man game. You mentioned the two-man game between Duncan Robinson and Bam. They didn't even have the Tyler Hero Bam Adebayo pick and roll going. Like, Tyler Hero did not have a pick and roll partner. And so, yeah, there was no flow to the offense. There was no function of the offense. They had no staple. They had no go-to play. They tried to come up with a go-to play specifically in that third quarter. They started running this Spain pick and roll with Khalil Ware diving off of a Duncan Robinson back screen and Nico trying to throw it over the top. They ran it like 2 or 3 times in a row. It worked once. And it's like Spo was just searching for answers all night. But like I said, there's no coach in the world that could have gotten that raw. Look at the starting lineup. Rozier, Hero, Kevin Love at this stage of his career in this economy. Haywood Highsmith, Jaime Jaquez Jr. in the middle of a sophomore slump, even though he's been playing a little bit better lately. Like, that's one of the worst. If that was your regular starting lineup, you would have the worst starting lineup in the NBA. Like, that's just flatly what it is. And there's just no amount of coaching that's going to make up for that.
Yeah, that's maybe a little harsh, but I see your overall point. Like, there is definitely there's a little Terrence. I mean, because we can't call Tyler Hero an all-star and then in the same token say that that's a pretty bad lineup. Like, you look at the Charlotte Hornets, I don't know that they have an all-star. I guess it's LaMelo Ball,
Brandon Miller. Yeah, those are two better. Yeah, I mean, those are pretty good players.
Look, I get overall the problem was, again, the Clippers defense was much better. They were kind of sniffing out the two-man game, trying to figure out a way of breaking down the pick and roll. And they did a good job of intercepting passes. I'll say also Miami looked like they were making a lot of sloppy passes, whether it was Duncan Robinson or Khalil Ware or Niko Jovic. There's a lot of passes that were just ill-timed. And I'm not sure what was off, if there was anything in particular. Maybe they were a little deflated as they were driving through the chaos and the terrible tragedy of what's happening in Los Angeles right now. I'm not going to point to that because we haven't heard that. And, obviously it shouldn't have been a factor. Maybe the Clippers were a little bit more engaged because they were playing back at home after a little bit of a break because of the fires that have been consuming Los Angeles. But at the same time, Miami they were completely flattened out. The offense was not existent. And as you said, they didn't have anything. They didn't have any kind of easy offense. They didn't have anything that they could manufacture. They didn't have a go-to player that they could just dump the ball to and let him go to work. Nothing was really working. A lot of it felt like a hope and a prayer with every Tyler Hero shot. And a lot of those fell. Like, to his credit, he did go 9 of 20 from the floor. So not a great, not a terribly efficient night perhaps, but between that and his 12 free throw attempts, a really solid outing to help boost his all-star case. And a lot of that, though, felt like it was, again, just hoping that those shots would fall, but no easy offense tonight. And that's unfortunate because the first quarter,
I think at least it was, to your point, Hero was good. I thought Hero had a great game. It's just nobody else was there for him, right? Like, Terry Rozier had 11 points. Jaime had 10. Khalil Ware had 19 points. A lot of that in garbage time when this game was already over. Like, Tyler Hero was fine. It was just that he had zero help offensively. He did as much as he possibly could. We're going to zoom out. We're going to look at the Heat's recent stretch of games and why this loss could change our perception of those last 3 wins. We're going to talk about all that next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find it decluttering and maybe refreshing your space a little bit, maybe finding a little reading area in the living room, something. And it just helps you get back into a routine. And whether you're tidying up, cleaning out, or you just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I've been looking for some furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find the pieces that fit my style and budget. And my favorite part, the free and hassle-free delivery Even for the larger items, Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I needed in no time. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or your budget. So give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Your favorite NBA team now has a free daily newsletter. Introducing the Locked On Heat newsletter, one stop for ultimate Heat and league coverage with local analysis and amazing writing from Katie Heindel, Mike Shearer, and Locked On fantasy basketball tips from Josh Lloyd. Sign up for free now at lockedondaily.com. The Heat won 3 games coming into this one, but this was the best team of this stretch, the best defense that they've faced in the last 8 games. And you saw what happened. So, what does this mean for life potentially after Jimmy Butler? If the Heat are indeed able to move Jimmy Butler before the deadline, after the deadline, whatever it is, and of course there was no Bam in this game, which is also a huge factor. But without Jimmy, we just know that this team has a lack of shot making. And I said this before, but wins against Utah, Golden State, Portland, that doesn't it's good, way to handle your business, but it doesn't really mean much in terms of what I think about this team's ceiling. So when this team does eventually move off of Jimmy Butler and move on, whatever they get for Jimmy Butler, whether that's a player in a trade or the cap space and what they use that cap space on, to me, what this means and what this game just underscored, right? And I think it's something I already knew and we already knew, but this team needs to find more shot making. In today's NBA, you just have to have more. And Tyler Hero, as great as he's been and the improvements that he's made, he's going to need more help, whether that comes from Bam just sort of reverting back to the mean offensively, or somebody internally sort of blossoming and becoming that player, or finding something from the outside and bringing it in after Jimmy Butler. This team needs more shot making. I don't think there's any question about it.
I don't either, but I will say that I think the loss of Bam, I mean, if you're talking about a talent disparity, taking Bam and Adebayo out of the factor, and look, it's not necessarily going to grease the wheels of Miami's offense, but we've seen a lot from this team in particular, this iteration. Their defense fuels so much of what they do offensively. It ignites the fast break, it limits possessions, etc. And without Bam there to do exactly that, it just leads to easier transition buckets for the Clippers or forced turnovers, things of that sort. A lot of the turnovers that you had today in tonight's game probably wouldn't have happened with Bam out on the floor, just because he makes things a little bit easier. And as I pointed out earlier, commands some gravity of his own on the offensive end as well. So that's certainly a factor. You're right, though. I mean, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Jimmy Butler scenario. We've talked about it before. We'll talk about it again. They could very well just keep him on the roster. I don't know if he's going to play again. My thought is not, but we've been surprised by this whole process, and so I wouldn't be surprised if that completely changes in Friday's game against Denver once they do end their 6-game road trip. But they need something, and I don't know, though. You make it seem like that's a foregone conclusion that they'll be able to get a shot maker in exchange for Jimmy Butler. I don't know that that's the case.
No, I don't think that. Right. No, I don't think that at all. But I just think whether it's directly in a Jimmy Butler trade, or you got to get on the path to finding something. You just need more shot creation at some point if you're going to lose Jimmy Butler, right? That just feels like it has to happen. I just don't know how they go about doing it. That is the hard part here. And you're right. I don't want to I don't want to dismiss not having Bam. That was a big deal in this game. But even again, I'm not just basing this conclusion off of one game against the Clippers on the road here. This is something that we've known about this Heat offense. It's not been a terribly great offense ever. And when you lose Jimmy Butler, it compounds the issues even more.
But you also had really poor shooting nights from Duncan, Nico, Jaime Jaquez, Terry Rozier, although that's been the norm of late. So I don't know. There was a lot of things that went wrong in tonight's game, and I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment.
Can I ask you a question on that, on the shooting though? Because there wasn't any drive and kick stuff. It wasn't like these shots were great shots. I mean, there was a in the second half, Duncan Robinson got 2 3-pointers off and had both of them blocked. Like,
Yeah.
it was just sort of passing the ball around the perimeter
was.
and just waiting for somebody to shoot it at the end of the shot clock. Like if you have somebody to break down that defense, again, the way that Jimmy Butler can when he's engaged, that opens up all the offense.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, I think in the second quarter, though, like Miami had those open looks. They only shot 1 of 13 from 3-point range. And I think that's where it really kind of started falling apart. Like, let me see here. Nico in
Yeah.
particular. He went 0 for 4. Kevin Love 0 for 3 for 3-point range in the second quarter. Like, I mean, despite the hot start, 0 for 2 from Tyler, 0 for 2 from Terry. That's your story right there. I don't think at that point in time, I don't think it was necessarily the Clippers defense. I felt like the Clippers defense was tightening at that point, but they started figuring things out more as the game progressed, getting things into the mud, which is ironic considering Miami's style over the last 5 seasons. But they played Miami style of basketball much more effectively than the Heat did tonight, and they just couldn't seem to get any kind of open looks. Just 3 of 19
I mean, the Clippers
overall in the second quarter.
They only scored 15 points in that second quarter. It's not like the second quarter swung the game, right? Like the Heat scored 13, the Clippers scored 15. It was really the third quarter when Miami's offense still couldn't get out of the mud, and the Clippers scored 36 points in the third quarter. That was really the quarter that swung
And
the
James
game.
Harden caught fire then, and so did Norm Powell.
Yeah.
Norm Powell 4 of 5 for 11 points. Harden 5 of 6 for 13. That was really the difference under 36 points.
And that's the
really
difference. And that is the difference, right? Like Norm Powell would have been the second best offensive player on the Heat tonight. I think any night, like just like with Jimmy Butler suspended and Bam Adebayo out, on any given night, Norm Powell would be qualitatively the second best offensive player for the Heat behind Tyler Hero. There's no question
Powell.
about it. And then you just, good player.
Yeah.
And then that's not even like, and the Clippers also had James Harden as the head of the snake, Ivica Zubac, who does great work who's great in the paint in this game. And Miami had no answer for him, which is a huge swing part of this game because without Bam, Kevin Love had no chance to guard Zubac in this pick and roll. The Clippers really got back into that in that third quarter after I thought they got away from it in the first half. So a lot of different reasons why the Heat lost this game in particular. But my point overall was sort of more of a zoomed out thing where it was, this should give the Heat, to me, this was more representative of what the Heat are without Jimmy Butler than the last 3 games.
That's fair. Could they have gone to Josh Christopher? Like, I mean, that's a guy who might get a bucket. Like, I'm not saying he's the answer, right? But just something could have been different. Like, I don't know if that player is on Miami's roster. Probably not. There's a reason why Christopher hasn't played, but there's also, the hope that maybe he'd be able to generate some of the same offense that he did either in the preseason or in summer league. And look, those are summer league, but at the same time, he is a much more natural scorer than Haywood Highsmith. Or maybe even Nico on a night when he's struggling like that. So if there's no immediate solution, at least you look to somebody on the bench and say, you know what, that might be able to provide some spark. Your point earlier is a valid one as far as Spo not being able to get any kind of blood out of these particularly disgusting stone. But I don't know. You're looking for something, and you can't just look to the return from Jimmy Butler or whatever that trade looks like as what might provide the answer for that particular problem. Because I don't know. I don't know that you're going to be able to find that player. And unfortunately, look, the answer was Terry Rozier. That's what they were hoping for, and that's totally bogged down, and it's broken down completely. Like they thought they were getting that player to supplement and complement what Jimmy, what Bam, and Tyler do, and unfortunately, that just hasn't been the case. He's supposed to be the guy who can pick up the slack offensively and be like, "Oh, I'll attack the rim, and even if I don't finish at 60% or higher." At the same time, I'll at least create rebounding opportunities so that you can generate some second chance points or something to that effect. That just hasn't been the case. He's just been missing wildly. He's just very inefficient, and it's just been a really bad showing for him for most of the season. So it's not to put just the pressure on him. I mean, everybody else has to step up, Nico, etc. But they don't have it, and I don't know. I don't know that they're going to be able to find an answer this season. And if that's your point, and then that's what if that's how you see this roster, then they might not make the playoffs. And I think we have to make that a very realistic possibility for this team, that all the enthusiasm and optimism that we saw over the 3-game win streak and even in their double overtime loss to the Sacramento Kings, this might be more of the reality that we see moving forward. If they don't have it dialed in from guys like Nico and Jaime, et cetera, and they don't have 20-point games, it might be more of an aberration than the norm. then at the same time, you're going to have to consider the fact that Miami's probably going to lose a lot of games over the next, second half of the season.
Well, fortunately, they still are really good at beating bad teams. And so, and again, fortunately, there's a
Not like
bunch
the
of bad
Clippers are a
teams in the Eastern
powerhouse,
Conference.
right?
So they're good at the Clippers are good. They're a good
They have
team.
the same record as Miami. I know it's the
But
Western Conference, but the same record as Miami.
in the West. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
like they're a better team than the Heat are, and they're getting Kawhi back and stuff like that's the Clippers are a good team. Like if Miami had Bam Adebayo in this game, I think they have more of a chance to win this game. So that
Sure.
again, I don't mean to dismiss Bam's absence just wholeheartedly there, but the Heat are going to make the play-in tournament, but being a top 6 seed, to your point, David, probably not going to happen, especially with the Bucks kind of figuring things out a little bit. The Pacers starting to figure things out. The Orlando Magic getting their guys back. Like getting a top 6 seed is going to be pretty tough for Miami, especially if Jimmy's not going to be like around. So we'll see what happens with that. We do have more to go with Jimmy Butler. Some more reporting on that situation. Plus, you mentioned Terry Rozier. Maybe the Heat should consider trading him too. We got a listener submitted trade idea for Terry Rozier. We're going to talk about all of that and more next year on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Who doesn't love going to live events, whether it's sports or music, theater or comedy? So many great memories to be had. You can attend a concert. I did that last year, and the energy and excitement was unforgettable. Great experience. But now Gametime has made it even easier to get the tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Gametime Picks. It's a great feature. It filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Like I said, I went to a concert last year. Gametime app made it so easy to find the tickets I was looking for. You find amazing deals, and you can even see the view from the seats before you're actually buying. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost right up front. No surprise fees at checkout, so you know exactly what you're paying for. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. And you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's game time. Today's episode is also brought to you by Hungry Root. When it comes to grocery shopping and meal planning, well, I've had an ongoing problem. I just don't have the time between work, life, trying to eat healthier. You're constantly feeling stressed out. I'd go to the grocery store, buy things I didn't need, and then end up with no time to actually cook those things. And sticking to your health goals, well, that could be a struggle, as you can imagine. But everything changed when I discovered Hungry Root. Honestly, it's been a game changer. It's the easiest way to eat healthy without all the stress. With Hungry Root, it's like having a personal shopper and nutritionist all in one. They take care of my grocery shopping, recommended meals, and groceries based on my tastes and health goals, from anti-inflammatory to high protein and gluten-free options, and of course for me, vegetarian options. And the best part, every meal is ready in 15 minutes or less. I'm talking quick, healthy meals that actually taste great, all delivered straight to my door. It's been a huge time saver and has made healthy eating so much simpler. So if you're going to love Hungry Root as much as I do, for a limited time now, you get 40% off your first box and a free item in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA and use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA to get 40% off your first box and a free item of your choice for life. hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA, code LockedOnNBA. Don't miss out.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. The best way to support the show is to like and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app. There's a bunch of stuff to get into with the latest Jake Fisher report around the Jimmy Butler situation. We'll probably have to save some of it for tomorrow, David. But I did want to get to this bit that went viral on Monday. According to sources that talked to Jake Fisher about Jimmy Butler, there had been multiple instances of Jimmy skipping morning shoot-arounds. Also, he's insisted on private flights separate from Miami's team charter, something that the organization and teammates have grown fatigued by. In addition to that, obviously his occasional on-court demeanor and stubbornness. But this bit went viral on Monday. People were talking about, oh my God, this guy's taking private jets away from the team. And, this is the part where the dirty laundry starts to come out. And I think this is something we all expected, especially as the bridges have seemed to be burnt completely between star player and organization. And wherever this information is coming from, I have no reason to doubt it. In fact, I think locally we've always known Jimmy Butler was a little bit of a loner and kind of was doing his own kind of thing on these road trips, right? We knew that he was taking his own flights a lot of times, especially when the team would go up to like New York and stuff. He'd like to spend more time there, and so he was taking his own private flights up there. He routinely stays away from the team hotel also, which was not reported in this piece, but again, something that we know locally oftentimes gets, whatever an Airbnb is for rich people. I guess they just like give millions of dollars of cash to people to use their homes. I don't know how it works.
Bags of cash,
but,
You just bring up
here's a bag of cash. Leave the premises. And he hangs out with the people who are close to him, right? He travels with his group and they kind of rent out these homes, and that's where he stays on the road. So all of this stuff isn't necessarily surprising, but and I think that was a storyline that got local. It was like, oh my God, no, everybody knew this. Why are they airing the dirty laundry? That's the part of this to me that's newsworthy. It's not the news itself. It's that this is now being put out there on a national scale. It's the airing of the dirty laundry, even though if we already kind of had a peek into the laundry basket already and we kind of knew what was in there. It's just the fact that this is coming out that is newsworthy.
Yeah, I'm not a fan, to be honest with you. I think, for one, we've also seen some people claim, and I think this is, I don't know I can't verify whether or not this has been the case or not, but some people have claimed that this is something Jimmy has been doing for years now, whether it was here in Miami, Philadelphia, Minnesota, maybe even going back to the Chicago days. Although I think it started in Minnesota, if I remember that correctly, that he's been doing the private flight thing pretty much on his own. And it hasn't been a problem up till now. I think it's just a matter of there's what's obviously a high conflict area here now between Jimmy and the front office, and it just feels more magnified. And look, you see the comments that we talked about in our previous episode from the rest of the team, that they're all more grateful that they're bonding off the court. It's more about they share something that Jimmy has always excluded himself from, and it hasn't been a problem up until now, except he's been able to back up his commitment to the team and show them, well, I might not travel with you, but I'm still going to give you 20 and 10 when I'm out on the floor, maybe 25 and 10, depending on a given night. And unfortunately, when he hasn't been doing that, and he hasn't been doing that for a few weeks now because injury for one, then his return, he's been off, the trade thing kind of hanging over his last few performances. And then on top of all that, the fact that he's been suspended, now he's forced to stay away from the team. It just feels like this is more news than it actually is. I don't know if the release, I don't know what the point of the release would be. Like, if it's coming from the team, it feels like that's something they wouldn't disclose, because if you're going to have already a pretty low trade value in exchange for a player like Jimmy Butler because of his contract demands, because of his age, etc., what would be the point for the team to release this? So
it's not coming from the team.
It's not coming from the team.
I don't think it's coming from the team. It's coming from it because to your point, it makes no sense for the team to air this out. Like, this doesn't make sense. It's coming from people that obviously Fisher is talking to that know about Jimmy Butler's situation. And by the way, like, this stuff has not been necessarily a secret. There's a lot of people who knew a lot of this stuff. And it just wasn't a problem. Stars taking the private jets and it wasn't a problem. This isn't like, there's other stars in the NBA who take private flights to their locations, their games and stuff like. But here's the thing. This is a thing that star players get to do. Star players get treated like star players, but when you're not performing like a star player, then the organization doesn't want to treat you like a star player anymore. And that's sort of the issue. That's like a star player. Or pay you. Exactly. So, like I said, there's a ton to get into here. We're probably gonna have to save a bunch of more for tomorrow's episode. I do want to get to one listener question. This comes from our Locked On Heat Insider community. Thanks as always to everybody who sends in these questions, especially on these late nights. We haven't been like texting you late nights because some people don't want to stay up for these West Coast games. So we're not going to bother you with the text messages at 12:30 in the morning. But this one comes from Andrew, who writes in, I figure most Heat fans are done with the Terry Rozier experience. As you both have said before, you can't just bench a guy getting paid over $20 million a year. Would someone like the Nets be willing to take him basically for free, a second-round pick or two, so that we might be able to sign somebody like Dennis Smith Jr. At this point, point guards are overrated. Little side swipe on just the point guard position overall, but that notwithstanding here, this trade idea, I don't see it. There's no reason for the Nets to take Terry Rozier even for free, because the thing about taking a player for free is you still have to pay that player. It's not very free. Right. And for Rozier, you have to pay him not just this year, but also next year. And he doesn't do anything for Brooklyn. First of all, they already have D'Angelo Russell. They would have to send expiring salary back. So maybe that would be D'Lo when he's able, whatever it is. I don't see the Nets being interested in the Terry Rozier experience. Even if it costs them a second-round pick, that's still a second-round pick that they'd probably rather have than having to pay Terry Rozier for the rest of this year and next.
I think it would cost, if anything, probably one of the young players, Nico Jaime Jaquez, even Ware. And I think Ware is probably untouchable because of the center position being so thin as it is. So I don't know. If there's some team foolish enough to say, yeah, we'll take a chance at Rozier, we think he'll be better here, then it would probably require Nico being thrown in or Jaime Jaquez being thrown in. And at that point in time, I think it's just not something Miami would entertain. So we're stuck with him. Like, there's just no way around it. Like, he's going to be a part of this roster for at least another year until maybe next trade deadline, when somebody says, oh, you know what, that $20-something million salary, that's something we don't mind having on the books because it's only going to be for a couple months and we'll get rid of X player in exchange for that. Other than that, I think, again, as I've said many times before, the book is out on Terry Rozier. Like, we knew who he was. He had a fantastic season in Charlotte before he was traded for. It seemed like he was going to fit a need. And it was certainly looked like an upgrade over what Kyle Lowry wasn't able to do at that point in his career any longer. The defense from Kyle was still okay. He wasn't always a great on-ball defender, but he was still drawing charges, occasionally grifting into a foul call, doing the things that Kyle had been doing for a long time of his career. And unfortunately, there just wasn't any offense to kind of back that up either. He was not several games where he just wouldn't shoot.
Right. No, and the other thing with Rozier too is, like, to your point, like, we knew what he was, right? Like, and you were hoping that you would get some volume scoring, understanding that there was going to be some inefficiencies with it. But now you're getting the inefficiencies and not even getting the volume. And I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. I will say this about Terry Rozier. It's not that bad. Like, he's not worth the money. But when you look at what Miami's plan is post Jimmy Butler, it's all about maintaining cap space for 2026. And we could debate whether or not that's the right plan or not, but this team is not going to be in a rush to get off of this contract. And they're definitely not going to attach one of the young guys or another first-round pick to get off this contract, because they don't have that level of urgency that I think some of Heat fans have to try to get Terry Rozier off this roster, mostly because a lot of Heat fans just don't enjoy watching him. But for the Heat, they're looking to make sure that they have cap space for 2026. And Terry Rozier's contract comes off the books in the summer of 2026. So they're willing to just eat it for next year, hope that there's some sort of reversion to the mean and that he plays a little bit better. But they're not gonna act with that kind of urgency where they're attaching valuable stuff to him in order to get off of him. They're not going to wait. They've already spent one first-round pick on Terry Rozier. They're not going to use another one or attach a good young player just to get off of them too. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.